The day started like any other at Crestwood High School. The students shuffled through the corridors, laughing, gossiping, and preparing for another day of classes. Teachers greeted them at the doorways of their classrooms, and the morning announcements crackled over the intercom. It was an ordinary Tuesday, or so everyone thought. At precisely 9:30 a.m., the first sign of trouble appeared. An alarm blared through the school, loud and jarring, cutting through the hum of everyday life. Students and teachers looked around, confused and startled. They had practiced lockdown drills before, but this time, it felt different. There was an urgency, a seriousness in the principal's voice that wasn't there during drills. "Attention all students and staff." Principal Harris's voice quivered slightly over the intercom. "This is a lockdown. Please proceed to the nearest classroom or safe area immediately. Lock all doors, turn off the lights, and stay quiet. This is not a drill." Panic set in almost instantly. Students in the hallways rushed to the nearest classrooms, some stumbling and crying. Teachers quickly ushered them inside, locking doors and covering windows. In Mrs. Sinclair's history class, 23 students huddled together in the dark, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. Mrs. Sinclair did her best to calm them, whispering reassurances that everything would be all right. Minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. The only sounds were the occasional sobs and the nervous shuffling of feet. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the hallways, followed by a scream. The students gasped, clutching each other tighter. Mrs. Sinclair put her finger to her lips, urging silence. The intercom crackled again. "All staff and students, remain where you are. Law enforcement is on their way. Do not, I repeat, do not leave your rooms." Whispers spread through the room like wildfire. Some students speculated about an active shooter, while others thought it might be a dangerous person trying to get inside. No one knew for sure, and the uncertainty only fueled their terror. In the chemistry lab down the hall, Mr. Thompson and his students were experiencing their own nightmare. The lights were off, but the glow from a Bunsen burner cast eerie shadows on the walls. Mr. Thompson carefully turned it off, plunging the room into complete darkness. They could hear faint noises outside, footsteps, the distant murmur of voices, and an occasional thud. Each sound sent a wave of fear through the group. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled. The students froze, holding their breath. Someone was trying to get in. The rattling became more frantic, accompanied by muffled grunts. Mr. Thompson motioned for his students to move to the back of the room, away from the door. He grabbed a heavy beaker, ready to defend his students if necessary. "Mr. Thompson, it's Officer Reed. Let me in." The voice was familiar, and Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment before unlocking the door. A police officer entered quickly, closing and locking the door behind him. "We're securing the building," Officer Reed explained in a low voice. "There's someone inside. We don't know who or how many. Stay here, stay quiet, and don't open this door for anyone." As Officer Reed left, the room fell silent again. Mr. Thompson's hands were shaking as he relocked the door. The minutes dragged on, and the oppressive silence was only broken by the occasional sniffle or whisper. Back in Mrs. Sinclair's classroom, the tension was palpable. Every small noise seemed amplified in the darkness. One of the students, Emily, was clutching her phone, her fingers trembling as she texted her mother, "Mom, we're in lockdown.
I'm scared."
I love you." She pressed send and then held her phone close, as if it were a lifeline. Another bang echoed through the school, this one closer. It was followed by a series of thuds and a scream that was abruptly cut off. Mrs. Sinclair clenched her jaw, trying to keep her composure for the sake of her students. In the main office, Principal Harris was coordinating with the police. Her usually calm demeanor was frayed, and she barked orders into the phone. "We need to get everyone out safely. How long until the SWAT team arrives?" 10 minutes, the voice on the other end replied. "Stay put and keep everyone calm." Principal Harris glanced at the security monitors, her eyes scanning the feeds for any sign of the intruder. The grainy footage showed empty hallways, classrooms with doors closed, and then she saw it, a figure moving stealthily down the science wing. The person was dressed in dark clothing, their face obscured by a hood. They carried something in their hand, but the camera angle made it impossible to see what it was. "They're in the science wing," she relayed to the police. "Hurry." The SWAT team arrived swiftly, moving through the school with precision. They cleared rooms methodically, ensuring the safety of students and staff. In Mrs. Sinclair's room, the tension broke when the door finally opened, revealing heavily armed officers. "You're safe now," one of them said, and the relief was palpable. Students began to cry, hugging each other and their teacher. In the chemistry lab, the SWAT team found Mr. Thompson and his students huddled together. They were escorted out, one by one, to the safety of waiting buses that would take them to a nearby community center. The intruder was eventually cornered in a storage room. After a tense standoff, they were apprehended without further incident. It turned out to be a former student with a grudge, carrying nothing more than a knife. The fear and panic, however, had been very real. As the students and staff gathered at the community center, parents arrived to pick up their children. There were tearful reunions and many hugs shared. The sense of relief was immense, but the fear lingered. In the days that followed, Crestwood High School slowly returned to normal, but the scars of that day remained. Students and teachers spoke in hushed tones about the lockdown, the fear they had felt, and the bravery they had witnessed. They held each other a little closer, realizing how precious and fragile their safety truly was. The school installed more security measures, held more frequent drills, and offered counseling to those who needed it. Life went on, but the memory of that terrifying lockdown was etched into the hearts and minds of everyone who had lived through it. It served as a chilling reminder of how quickly normalcy could be shattered, and how important it was to cherish each day. Months passed, and while Crestwood High School began to heal, the memory of that terrifying day lingered. The new security measures provided a sense of safety, but the students and teachers had an unspoken bond forged in those dark hours. Emily, who had texted her mother during the lockdown, now carried a small charm in her pocket, a gift from her mom, a symbol of protection. She often found herself absent-mindedly touching it, a reminder of her family's love and the fragility of life. Mrs. Sinclair, the history teacher, became an advocate for school safety, working with the administration to improve emergency procedures. Her classroom, once a place of fear, transformed into a haven where students felt understood and supported. Mr. Thompson, the chemistry teacher, incorporated lessons about resilience and preparedness into his curriculum. His students, who had seen him ready to defend them, respected him even more deeply now. Principal Harris, despite the stress and fear she had felt, stood resolute. She led the school with renewed determination, her focus on ensuring that such an event would never happen again. She often reminded her staff and students, "We are a community. Together, we are strong."